for Monday, May 8th. First item is if you have a cell phone like I do, would you please mute it or turn it off so that we don't be disrupted. And if you do have to take a call, please step all the way outdoors. The lobby out here is a great echo chamber for us. We have no public hearing this evening. We do have a couple of select board packets that we need to approve, or I'm sorry, minutes of previous meetings. The first one is March 13th, which we have before us, and we cannot deal with this one because absent were Jeff Parker and Owen Casas. So I'm the only one.
Well, we'll never be able to approve those minutes.
That's true.
So
We're gonna
let's
have a
just-
real problem.
Let's just approve them.
What does Robert's rules say?
The
reason why we never
the
can is that
majority who were present
Oh.
in a case like this. So we can hold this one until Ken is here.
the two of you can do it on the screen.
Okay, so, boy, I tell you, last time we couldn't approve it because it hadn't been included in the electronic packet. The other one is for March 27th. Everyone, all of us were here at that time, so I'd entertain a motion to approve if we could.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any changes, errors, or omissions?
There we go. No,
Nope? Then I'll call for
there's
the
a little
vote.
tiny one, but it's a spelling thing. We'll get that later.
Okay. All in favor? That is approved. So, some announcements. Next meeting of the Select Board will be Monday, May 22nd. Is that right? That sounds right. Okay. I'm going to accept it as right. We will also be meeting, the next regular after that would be Monday, June 26th. A couple of items on that. First of all, the town meeting, the election day is June 13th, Tuesday. The polls will open at 8 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. They'll be in the Richardson room of the town office. Please enter through the front doors and follow the signs. Town meeting, the open town meeting will be on Wednesday, June 14th, 7 p.m. That will be upstairs here. That will be live streamed. And the select board organizational meeting will be immediately after town meeting on the stairs, up on the stage. And that will, of course, follow the swearing in of the new members of the select board, which goes back to the meeting on Monday, June 26th. That will be the first official meeting of the new select board. A couple of announcements. We do have a select board workshop. Wastewater budget and visioning workshop will be Wednesday, May 17th, 4 p.m., and that's at the town office. All committee openings, committee and board openings in the town are posted up on the website. Do we have any agenda changes for this evening? I can't. Yes, that's right.
You said Wednesday the 17th.
Oh, I'm going to back up a moment. The wastewater budgeting and visioning workshop is on Monday, May 15th. Somehow I missed that in my notes. All right. Again, I'm going to go ahead and do we have any agenda changes this evening? None? All right, then we will move forward. Public comment. Public comment should be directed at those issues not under discussion in this evening's agenda. Comment from the public will be welcome prior to each agenda item. Further comment will be granted only by permission from the board. All public comment should be brief and to the point. Do we have anyone wishing to make public comment this evening? And hearing none, we will go to the town manager's report.
Thank you. A couple of things. We have, as you know, can tell, we have a batch of our people in blue out in the audience. They're here for some special announcements and recognition. One, we have three different announcements. One is Craig Cooley has reached his 20-year milestone. He's not here. The next one is Travis Ford. Is he coming?
He's on his way back from the jail.
Did he just get released, or? The second was a special recognition to Travis for his years serving as sergeant. And I do know that he helped us out in a period of transitions and stuck around a little longer than he had hoped, so we had that. And also, the final thing was to do a special recognition, appointing Sergeant Jimmy Moore as our new sergeant of the police department. We went through a process, promotional process. Jimmy came up, did very well in that process, and so we'll be appointing him as the new sergeant for the police department, taking over for Travis as he transitioned down. And I know his wife is here, I'm sorry, Lisa is here to do the official honors of pinning his badge on him, correct? That's correct. So if you guys want to come up here, we can
Get to it.
go through that, so. That means you have to come up here, Lisa.
Not only is this a tradition, but it's also a real test of trust from the wife and husband.
I see he's wearing a very heavy jacket here.
That pin is quite long. You may do the honors, ma'am.
Yeah, that thing could hurt.
Yeah, I know.
Badge right there on him, and where you-
Can you turn this way a little bit? There you go.
Don't worry if you get a little skin, my wife got me right in the chest.
There's a whole new meaning to pinning the badge.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Come over here. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to all of the
Congratulations,
officers
Jimmy.
that came for this
Being here.
recognition.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, you get two for the price of one.
I'm still waiting to see what Travis is.
Yeah. I want to say thank you to the officers that came for this promotion. I think it means a lot to me that the spirit of camaraderie between the two departments is strong, and I want to say thank you to you guys.
If you give me a minute, I might be able to stall till Travis gets here, but.
Okay.
Okay. I was kind of wondering why we had a Camden police car out in front, and I was beginning to worry because yours was also right in front of it. And
Yes, and you did something.
what are we in trouble with tonight?
Again, congratulations to Jim on his promotion. We took our time going through the process. Jim was the only candidate who did put in for that position. So he was the number one candidate all the way through the process. Congratulate him on that. With Jim's promotion, being new to this position in the town of Rockport, I've extended my sergeants here, Dan Brown and John Tooley, to help Jim with his transition into the new position, anything that he needs for help from any of us. Lieutenant Geary had a prior engagement, or he would have been here tonight as well. One of the goals I have is to have Jim finish 2 of the FBI leader training segments this year, so he will have completed what's called the trilogy. My supervisors in Camden, including myself, over the last few years have all become trilogy graduates. So it'll put us on the same management philosophy. We'll all be speaking pretty much the same language when it comes to supervision, and it's quite a benefit. It's a process that's quite hard to do. We were fortunate I had enough money in Camden to get us all done at one time, but you don't find many agencies that have everybody trained in the same management philosophy, which is a benefit to both towns. Jim will be asked to pick up supervisory duties when we're slack in Camden, as we do. The Camden supervisors pick up that responsibility when we're slack in Rockport. We've got a lot done in the last year, and this year we plan on getting a lot more done. I'll let you all talk, but I know none of you want to get up here and say anything.
While we're waiting, what do you have in mind in terms of getting more done this upcoming year?
Well, I mean, we were fortunate. I wanted to save some of this for when Travis got up here, but he helped me out immensely by staying on another 6 months. He told me right up front when I took over that I've been thinking about getting out of supervision for a long time. I said, well, give me 6 months, and he did. Travis, many people don't know, but when the department was going through a series of changes there, he was pretty much the glue that kept everything together. Not that he would ever want any credit for that or anything, but it's nice to have him. He's still helping me out immensely, and he will continue to do that. His want to get out of supervision was so he could go back to patrol and do the things that he liked, like patrolling, answering his complaints, spending time at the school, the hospital, things like that. Travis's wife is a school teacher, so the school is near and dear to him. And the guest of honor has just arrived.
One of the-
Work doesn't get in the way of the working man.
You don't need
Travis,
to
why
sit
don't you
down.
step right up here?
You don't
We're talking about you now because you were a little late. And I was just telling him how much of a help you were to me when I took over as interim police chief. And those of you all know Travis, probably one of the finest officers I've ever worked with. I'm not saying that because he's standing here, but that's true. He thinks about everything he does. He cares about the town. And he's just a true professional, community police officer. And returning to I've been in police supervision going on 20 years. Dan Brown has probably got, what? Since 1988 in police supervision. It's a tough job. Sergeant is a tough job. You are the first one the officers are looking to when you come through the door in the morning, and you are the first one the administration's looking for when there's an issue. It takes a toll on you. And sometimes when you decide, you know what, I want to go back to the good old days. And Travis made that decision. But staying there for that 6 months to help me, I wouldn't be as far, and the department wouldn't be as far as we are today had I not had that. I want to give you some recognition for that, and Rick's got straight up.
It says, presented to Sergeant Travis Ford, Rockport Police Department, in appreciation for your loyal and dedicated service as a patrol supervisor. So, thank you. I wanted to say thank you, too. You did a great job for us. There you go.
Thank you, I appreciate this.
Thank you for your help.
We could have put a brand new badge on there, but it wouldn't signify the wear that badge has it. That's wear that this man put on that badge.
Oh, that's his original
That's
badge?
his original badge. We took and had it put on there. And nothing says a working man like a worn-out badge.
But, you know, as with all military and law enforcement organizations, it really is, and, you know, I'm speaking as, you know, a retired officer from the Army, that the backbone is always the NCOs or the sergeants, that they're the ones that the working men really have to look up to and are their first line interface with the rest of the world. And so, you know, I'd like to, you know, echo my thanks to Travis for all of his years of service here. And we're glad that you're staying on. And to the other two sergeants tonight, thank you for your efforts and work. And good Lord, look at all those service drives. Dan, that's quite an accomplishment. So, you know, again, thank you very much.
Could we get a group picture up front?
Sure.
That'd be
Bring 'em
great.
all
That
up.
would be great.
Yeah. We can get out of the way and you can have the.
Be part of it. Jim, is that first sergeant? You're welcome. Linda, what would you like? You can join us all.
We can hijack over here.
You can shoot with us, you can be in the picture with us.
Come on. Come on, everybody.
Like herding cats.
Yeah, it is like her.
You guys can come back here.
Yeah, Rick, go back. Yeah, that's perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're all done with us, we can get back to doing the job.
I think he still has to announce the new patrol car.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Besides, for all the people watching live stream, they're just going willy-nilly, no one.
yeah, they're trying to figure out what the heck are they doing? No, just one last comment. Just one last comment. The work of the police department over the past year has been, the things that have been happening and the changes, I'm really pleased. I'm pleased where, you know, we have a new sergeant. And I'm really looking forward to us making things really good here for the Camden-Rockport area. The cooperation between the two towns in police work has been pretty exemplary. And I'm proud to be part of that and have an opportunity to work with you guys. Thank you very much. And you don't need to sit here and listen to me drone on about for the rest of my report. So there's the picture of the new cruiser. You can leave. You're free to go. You know, I think everybody else would like to get out of here too. So the rest of the report is I was serious. You don't have to stick around. Yeah, you don't want to. I'd be getting out of here if I were you.
I feel way safer.
Mike is saying he'd like to get out of here.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
The new cruiser, I don't know if you've noticed, has arrived and they're putting it into service. I don't think it's been rolled into service yet, but it's all outfitted pretty much. I think we might have a couple of last-minute things to do.
Thank you.
The Keep Rockport Beautiful event went very well with 125 volunteers. They collected about 2,200 pounds of litter from the sides of the road, 30 roads and 3 parks. That's not counting about 3,000 pounds, is that correct, Mike, of that the?
2,000,
The inmates picked up also on Route 90 and 17?
Right, and we picked up another 32 or 34 tires off Mount Pleasant.
Yeah. So the effort of these folks has been pretty amazing, and it's spreading to other towns. Camden did their first one this year, and from what I understand, other towns are looking at doing the same thing. And so they'll be joining us either in the fall or next spring. There were also 15 or more businesses and organizations that participated in this event. I'll quickly go through those. Adventure Advertising, Bank of America, the Coastal Mountain Land Trust, Farley and Sons, Harley Company, Interact Club from the school, I believe that's a school club, National Honor Society, Penn Bay Medical Center, Rockport Landscaping, Rockport Steel, the Rockport Town Office, the Samoset, Seacoast Security, think I have those here, yep. Seacoast Security, the Study Hall, VSTV, Circle K, Fresh Off the Farm, Flatbread Pizza. Flatbread, I think, gave us,
Flatbread saw people cleaning up trash on the side of the
Gave
road,
us a-
went and found one of the groups and gave me a stack of 20 free pizzas, which I turned over to those folks. I didn't
Right.
keep them.
yep. Subway and Hannaford all helped with this event. So in the long run, we picked up, or not we, they picked up, I picked up a couple bags of trash. They picked up, 2 tons of trash off our roads. So a big thank you to that group, Maggie Christie and all of those folks that did all of that work. And they've already started planning for the fall event, which is September 29th and 30th is what they're planning. So they've already started. We had a debriefing the other day, and we also have, is the police chief still here?
No, he's left.
He's left. We also, there were some things that they noticed from their participation of places that we might need more policing on those roads because the litter and needles are bad in a couple of spots. So, so the high sidewalk has moved along very well. As you can see, a lot of people have driven by it. I've only had one negative comment and mostly positive comments about the way it looks. I have to admit, I was a little nervous that we'd get swamped with people that would hate it. But we've had a lot of positive comments about it. A couple of things that we're looking at, we're looking at planting some vines along in a few places so that the wall will get some natural vegetation on it, so it won't be just this long span of wall. Also, Will was looking at, while we're doing this, does it make sense for us to bury a conduit in there so that if we wanted to have power for lights or Christmas lights on the handrail or on the railing, or lights along the walkway, special lights along the walkway, we could. He's getting prices for me on that. The whole thing will be, the plan is to have it done by Memorial Day. Once the concrete is poured, there's about a month for them, the railing, the rail that goes up there is gonna be different than the old railing. It's gonna look more like, a picket fence type, or it'll be steel, but it's gonna be, it can't be a a rail fence because the drop is too high. So you have to make sure people don't slide underneath the railing. So that all basically has to be custom fabricated.
How tall will that be then?
I think
That
it's,
fence?
for some reason, I'm thinking 42 inches, or is it higher than that? Yeah, 48? It's how big, I forgot. How big?
42 is the minimum.
Oh, okay. So we may have gone to 48 inches. So that's gonna take some time to fabricate. And then the walkway will be a 5-foot wide path as opposed to what was there before, 32 or 34 inches.
At best.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, in the good spots. I mean, fortunately for us, the Friday before we started construction on the wall, a big section underneath the sidewalk, about midway in, collapsed. And we started tearing the sidewalk apart on that Monday morning, so.
Yeah, Rick, a quick question on this. On my way over tonight, I saw somebody put a 10-mile-per-hour speed sign at the far end from here, just across from Lotta's driveway. Looked like it was leaning in there, but it wasn't one of these warning, where it's like black on yellow. No, this was a black on white, like it's an official 10-mile-an-hour speed limit in there all of a sudden.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
I'll check.
okay. It wasn't there when I went walking by this morning.
The commercial street sewer extension has gone very, very well. We're finishing up. The hope is that they'll be paving tomorrow night. Is it tomorrow night? Weather permitting. That's all we have left, and then just general cleanup. But that project has gone very well, except unless you were one of the neighbors that had to endure the 2 nights of construction that went on. It was very loud. It was one Sunday night and one Sunday night and Monday night, or Saturday night and Monday night. And it was very loud, and, but we managed to get most of that construction done in those 2 nights. And then when we got to the top of the hill out just in front of, Tropical Nails, was it that?
Oh,
Yeah.
on the water,
On the water?
yeah.
Where a manhole had to go in there, that had to be done at night also, because the equipment couldn't swing out into the road. And, so that one had to be done at night, and that went until about 1 in the morning. But the paving work should not be as near as loud and will not take near as long. That should be, they should be done with that by like 9 or 10 at night, wouldn't you think? So the Summer Street work, we expect that work on Summer Street to start very soon. We've been working with Mike and Bill Lane and Will Gartley on what's happening on Summer Street. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a sinkhole in the middle of Summer Street, and over the weekend, water was actually coming out of that sinkhole and running down the road. So we're still in the investigative stage of what's gonna happen there. And on top of that, remember, they've gotta come back in and regrade that so that the water is actually running into the catch basins that we put in. Unfortunately, as you can see from these photos, that last, I think it was Friday, a truck was going up the hill. The one part of this project that went right was these stairs. A truck was going up the hill, and somehow, I didn't get the full idea of what happened, but got near the further up the hill and lost power or something and couldn't stop and ended up rolling backwards down. And fortunately, it doesn't seem that way, but fortunately for him, he was able to get hung up on that railing, because if he didn't stop, he was going across the road and down into the river. He said that was the only thing that stopped him from going down the hill. Fortunately, that's did stop him. So the Mike's getting the estimates and all of that, so the insurance carrier will be notified through our insurance carrier. So that's moving forward.
To add to your report, Rick, there was a fear that through construction of the water line, that sewer could have been hit. So it was cambered today, the whole street was cambered, and there were it's just like no problem.
So no damage to the sewer?
No damage to the sewer.
And you bring that up in regard to the sinkhole, the water,
Yes,
the
yeah.
water issue.
Yep.
And you bring that up from the very back corner of the
You're
room
right,
where no one
right.
can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we initially had looked, Mike had the sewer cover removed because it is in the vicinity of, if that was damaged and was allowing the water to get into the system and dirt to get into the system, that he might see evidence of that, so he went down and checked a couple of the sewer manhole covers and did not see much evidence of that, but decided to go ahead and have it cambered on top of that, and the system is clean and running just fine. So we're still in the process of trying to figure out what's happening. I hope we'll figure that out in the next week or so, couple weeks. Bill? Public Works, they've been in real heavy-duty cleanup mode these days, cleaning up from all the winter, brush cutting, ditch lines, all of that stuff. Big thing was putting in the new docks, so, not the new docks, getting the docks in the water for the harbor, that was done. Fire department has been busy with calls. Chief Peasley was on vacation, and it was a particularly busy time. One of the things, the good pieces of news is that all the training and the work that the firefighters go through, preparing them for the time that the chief is not there, worked very well. So, while we all think we're indispensable, it is nice when the system works and the backup works. And there were some difficult calls, but the fire guys are well-trained and they handled it just fine without Chief Peasley there. So, thank you to those guys. Safety Committee has been very busy. All the employees have received their CPR and AED training. So they're moving through that. All those trainings are getting completed. Tomorrow morning, we're doing fire extinguisher training, live fire extinguisher training, similar to what the firefighters do. So that'll be fun. Finance, Megan has been working on the wastewater budget as well as the CIP. So the wastewater budget, we finished that today. So one thing that's not on there is in assessing, Kerry Lightman passed his certification for the IAAO, which is the International Association of Assessing Officials. So it was a pretty grueling test that he's been studying for many, many months, and took it last week and received notification today that he did pass that, which is good news. And finally, I was one of 6 people that testified against LD 1516, which was a bill that was essentially to squash municipalities' ability to do any broadband work on their own. And the testimony was so compelling that even the bill sponsor made the motion to basically kill the bill. So
That bill, I read that bill. That was a horrible bill. There was not like any, that was a bad bill.
Even Maine Municipal was there, and one of the things was that he was saying, I'm a lawyer and I can't even figure out what page such and such says. He says, if any of you can explain it to me, please do that. And, but it was obviously, it was a bill put together by a national organization. And they're going around the country trying to push this legislation in, all over the place. We were able, and it was, what was happening in Maine was being watched very closely nationally over that bill. And we effectively squashed that, so that was good news. So that's the extent of my report.
I have a couple questions. I understand that there was an alarm that went off last week. Apparently trucks were being moved out and somebody was being interviewed by the TV and,
Yeah.
and I also happened to see a very interesting video that was posted, YouTube type video that was posted.
Yes, there was, I was doing a TV interview with VSTV for, over the solar panels, and one of our firefighters, who will remain nameless, Billy Smith, happened to step on the alarm, the siren on the truck that sounds like a old World War I air raid warning thing, and it just kept going and going and going and going. Well, he posted a YouTube video, or I think it was a YouTube video that was hilarious. He was pretty embarrassed. He thought, that I'd be really angry at him, and I thought it was pretty funny myself. And the video was even better.
The other item I have, and this is more serious, the footbridge down in the harbor, when you get to the commercial side of it, I noticed this morning that the handrail, when you come down off that footbridge, apparently was clipped. I'm guessing that when they were putting the floats from the commercial side in the water, they must have hit it and ripped it up, because the whole section of it gone, and two nice screws, stainless steel screws still sitting right there waiting to rip somebody's hand apart. Yeah. I meant to send you a message today, but every time I remembered it, I was doing something else.
Without coming, can you just add in your report, Rick, I've got a bunch of people sending lots of emails about, can you get this, and why haven't you started that? And it's just been so wet getting equipment in certain places to get work done, that if you get questions on why isn't that done yet, I would like to have started things a month ago, but some things are just too wet to start.
So you'd rather reiterate that?
You need to reiterate. Yep.
What Mike was saying is that the weather is causing him some problems keeping up with all the work that needs to get done and the timing that things normally get done. But because the ground is so saturated, getting equipment into certain places is really difficult, because the ground is just so saturated.
And you just can't catch a break, because it doesn't go more than 24 hours before just at least another sprinkle to sop it right back up.
It has allowed us to do other work, but it's holding back up.
Okay, any other questions of the manager?
Not right now.
Then moving ahead, we have no unfinished business this evening. We do, in the new business, have two gifts that have been made to the town. One from Johansson Boat Works, $1,000 donation to the harbor. And the other, Maine Media College, $5,600 payment in lieu of taxes. Before we go to motions and anything, I want to remind us that because there are only three of us, and the town charter requires that for a vote to pass, it must have 3 positive votes. So if we have any dissenting votes tonight, even though it may be a 2-1 in favor, that will be a failure on that motion. So just
So
want to
you're gonna have to
remind us.
sell me on taking this money from people.
I just wanted to bring it up as
questionable.
before we get to the really heavy lifting that we do. So the first one is the Johansson Boat Works. My recollection is that they make this donation every year. I'm not sure if it's always in this amount, but they do always make a contribution to the harbor. So would you mind making a motion to?
I move to approve the donation from Johansson Boat Works in the amount of $1,000 to the harbor.
I will heartily second that.
And we do have thank you letters to sign, so we will take care of that at the end of the meeting. Do we have any?
Just a procedural question. We don't have to put the actual line item that it's gonna go in. We
Nope.
just say to the harbor. Good enough.
Goes to the harbor. Ready for the vote?
Yep.
All in favor? Very good. And we also have the donation in lieu of, or payment in lieu of taxes of $5,600 from Maine Media, the Maine Media College. I think it'd be good to have a motion on this one
I
too.
move to accept the payment of $5,600 in lieu of taxes with gratitude from Maine Media Workshops in College.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And I believe they have been doing this pretty much every year too, since they received their charitable foundation and no longer have to pay regular taxes. So, do we have any other comment on this? And I have a letter here for that too. So, all in favor? Very good. The next item that we have is, we have 3 resignations. The first is from Linda Posen of the Parks Committee. And the second, well, and the other 2, one from Bill Lane and one from Will Gartley. Because they are the town engineers, their firm Gartley and Dorsey, they felt that they could not serve on the Capital Improvement Committee because it would effectively be a conflict of interest. So they are also tendering their resignations, which means we need to find new members for that. But first, I entertain the motion to accept Linda Posen's letter of resignation, and it was included in our packet.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and I'm sure that we have a letter of thanks to her as well.
She's
Yes.
hardworking, member of the community on various committees.
Yes. All in favor? That passes. And we also need to accept the resignations of Bill Lane and Will Gartley. We can do that in a single,
If we have to.
well,
Wait, what if we don't?
well, you know,
'Cause that's
that-
very odd to get a resignation letter and then have to approve someone resigning.
it's a formality.
It's a formality.
Yes, it's a matter of procedure.
The
But
same
if we
formality
chose
we did on
not
the
to,
one
we
above it.
could leave Will and Bill in this conflict of interest purgatory. That's very interesting. Thank you for being my example.
So I move that we accept with gratitude for their service, the resignations of William T. Lane and William B. Gartley from the Capital Improvement Committee, and then sentence them to show up at each of the meetings anyway.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we need any further
You
discussion?
can drop that last.
They're just being sentenced to purgatory, that's all.
They have to go to-
All in favor? That is passed as well. We now have 2 appointments. The first one, Kate McClellan, has a conflict, and she won't be here until approximately 8 o'clock, so I would like to hold that one until she is able to arrive. The other is for Ames Curtis, and this is effectively promoting her. We approved her a couple months ago to be an alternate on the Parks Committee. With Linda's resignation, it would be normal that she would step forward and become a regular member of that. And I don't recall seeing anything as far as a recommendation by Dave Jackson, the chair of that committee, even though I asked him for one, and he said he heartily endorses her being elevated.
Yeah,
But,
I have nothing in the packet. on that.
yeah. Do we want to hold this and deal with it at our next meeting and insist that she be here? Or do we just want to, because she already had made the application, and we interviewed her and approved her, and the idea behind the alternate members is that they would step up when a regular member was either unable to continue or has resigned.
Remind me, because I'm getting old. Dave Jackson came to us and asked that that committee be enlarged because he had trouble getting people to go to the meeting, and I thought that was somewhat counterintuitive.
We just,
So, how does this work with that? And also, I think that the select board in its new iteration might be clarifying a lot of the questions with alternate members and what have you coming up.
we discussed this at their last meeting, and that was before Linda Posen had tendered her resignation. And Dave wanted to include more, and I still am not clear why he thinks getting 4 members to attend a meeting to have a quorum is easier than getting 3 members. But his feeling is that with more people to pull from, that it would be a benefit. They are still in the process of reworking their bylaws to show how that would work. One of the things they wanted to do was also, sort of like the ORC has seats designated for the planning board or, what's the other one, zoning board of appeals, I forget which, the other committee that has a sitting member of the ORC. They were looking to do a similar process with the Rockport Garden Club, that the garden club would appoint a representative to sit on the Parks Committee, because they do work hand in hand, and typically they have at least one member of the garden club show up to every one of their meetings. Those, though, he has not brought those, the changes to that,
So
that bylaw.
to
us.
clarify, Ames would be going in as one of the present
One of the
5.
present 5 members,
I got you.
yes.
Here's my only concern. I just don't have anything from Ames saying that she would, because she doesn't need to present herself. She already did. We already approved her. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with approving someone to a sitting position versus an alternate position without at least just some acknowledgement from Ames that she's okay with it. Now, I'm
Yeah.
highly doubtful she would be opposed to it. Is there any harm in waiting a little bit? She doesn't even have to come. She just has to send us an email.
No, and actually, the Parks Committee is meeting on Wednesday, and I can express that to her at that time. So, just a letter saying, I want to step up. Yep,
Sure.
that's all. Okay. I've got a note on that. So,
Just,
for Kate, we will hold that until she is here. So, I'm gonna set that aside. Our next item, we have the MSAD 28 Five-Town CSD for 2 purposes tonight. The first one will be to present the budget, and the second one will be to discuss the new school proposal.
Yes, and I've got 2 budgets to present because we've got 2 different school districts.
Can you hit escape on that keyboard you have there? Thank you.
Is that all you need me to do?
Well, how about, yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all you need me to do?
You need that?
Whoa.
Yeah. There we go.
If you go back one,
You go back one. You got the
I can go
arrows.
back one. Okay. So I am here to present the SAD 28 budget, which is Camden and Rockport K through 8 school district. Then
And before, for the people at home, you are Maria Libby.
I am Maria Libby, Superintendent of Schools for the 2 school districts that are represented, that Rockport sends to. 2 school districts, MSAD 28, which is the K-8 district for Camden and Rockport, and the Five-Town CSD, which is the 9 through 12 district for Camden, Rockport, Hope, Appleton, and Lincolnville. So I've got those 2 school budgets to present. And I'll do the SAD 28 first. So as we developed our budgets, we had the following list of priorities for our schools. We work hard to minimize the impact to taxpayers. We prioritize quality instruction. Try to strategically use the capital reserve fund in our fund balance. We minimize use of the carryover to the extent we can. We evaluate and maintain effective programming. We keep technology equipment current, pay close attention to our historical expense data. We project long-term as we're doing our budgeting in terms of technology, enrollment, facilities, et cetera. And then we also strategically use our capital reserve fund. So the requested budget for the SAD 28, and just to remind people what the budget process is, there is a town, kind of like a town hall referendum meeting on May 23rd. May 23rd at the high school. SAD 28 is at 6 o'clock, and the Five-Town CSD is at 7 o'clock. And at that meeting, each of the warrant articles are voted on by taxpayers who attend the meeting. And then those, that budget then goes to the ballot to be voted on in June at the budget. So we have a two-step process for our budget.
You put on our calendar in the digital world.
So the target for the SAD, so again, this is a K-8 district. The school board gave us a target of trying to keep our expense budget at no more, they wanted to see what it was like at 2% and at a 2.5% increase. We came in at a 1.89% increase to our expense budget, and the increase to the taxpayers is 1.77%. So we felt pretty good about coming in pretty low with our budget this year. And just to give you an idea of what's happening with our demographics over the past 5 years, we have the enrollment has declined a little bit, but it's gone back up a little bit. It was at about 760 5 years ago, and we're at about 725 now. We're expecting about 740 next year. So in that range, the population at both of the schools, the Camden Rockport Elementary School and the Camden Rockport Middle School, have been pretty stable over the last few years. So just to get an idea of the revenue side of our budget, this is a summary of the revenues. You can see in the top line that we are going to use the same amount of carryover that we used last year, which is $318,000 from our fund balance. Our state subsidy increased about 13%. And that state subsidy, people may be aware that we are a minimum receiving district. That means that we pay almost the full cost of our education through local tax dollars. We get reimbursed for a certain percentage of our special ed expenses. And this year, the state increased from reimbursing us at a rate of 30% to 33%. And that 3% meant that $61,000 extra in the state contribution. Over the years, we've gotten revenue from state agency client funds. That really is the home that was built on Route 90 that started as Harbor Family Services, and it's now run by Sweetser. We have very limited responsibility at this point for the education. Most of the students who attend that school now are out of district placements, and we don't see them. So that's not changing a whole lot, but it is a small revenue source for us. We expect it to be about the same next year. Transportation costs for revenue have gone up a little bit, and that's because transportation costs have gone up, and actually that's the CSD paying us a little bit more because the SAD owns all of the buses and runs the transportation, and we provide busing services for Camden and Rockport students who go to the high school. And so we charge the Five-Town CSD for those transportation services. We are going to have about a $30,000 decrease next year, and that is one special ed student tuition that we were getting, and that student has moved, and we won't be getting that tuition in the future, that revenue from tuition. So overall, our revenues have increased about 3.16%.
A quick question about, while the revenue goes down in the bigger picture, that dropping that student, the student going on to some other facility, is that actually a net gain for you? in the sense that you're not spending money that's
Yes, that can be a net gain, so that can be offset, because that student, I am pretty sure that student had like a one-to-one ed tech that we would not need in another year. So oftentimes, that's a wash in the other side of the equation. So our expense summary, again, by cost center, really, if you look, and these are the articles that will appear on the ballot. If you look at the bottom, you'll see a 1.89% increase in our expenses. And the total budget for the SAD 28 is listed on that bottom line as well. It's $13.365 million is the budget for the SAD. The CSD is just under $13 million, so it's pretty close to $26 million between the two schools.
That's a good question. It's not a huge dollar amount, but that increase in other instruction was high. I guess I don't understand what other instruction, what comprises of that line?
The other instruction is co-curricular, extracurricular, summer programming. So in that line probably are some stipends that pay for all of the extracurriculars that we do and the people who run them. But there's a chunk in there, I can't remember, it's probably close to $10,000 that is going to go toward a summer school program that we're going to offer this summer that we did not offer last summer. So we increased the amount we're allocating to summer school. We have a new program that we are going to target students entering kindergarten who, through their screening that's happening, either just happened or is about to happen, but around this time, kindergarten registration, we do a screening for those students. We're going to target students who don't demonstrate the readiness we'd like them to have entering kindergarten. So we're going to do a 4-week program in August to target students to give them a little bit of a boost before they enter kindergarten.
Right.
So the overall tax impact comes out at 1.77%, and at the bottom half of that chart, you can see the impact relatively to Camden and Rockport. And there is an increase in the impact to Camden of 1.52%. Rockport's a little higher at 2.1%. Together, those yield 1.77. Because we're minimum receivers, that is solely based on the number of students being sent from each town. So what that says is that next year, Rockport has probably a few more students, relatively speaking, than they did this year compared to Camden.
Do you have the breakdown of how many students from both towns?
I don't have that off the top of my head. Do you happen to have it? It's pretty close to 50-50. There's not a huge difference, but I don't have it. I mean, we have 740 students, so, approximately half of them from each town. And just to give you an idea of the change over time, this is over the past 9 years, and we looked at the enrollment change over time. Our enrollment has gone down. We were at a high, 2009 was 835. It's been pretty stable for the past, 8 years or so, but it has gone down a little bit. Our expense budget has gone up about 9% or about 1% a year for the past 9 years. Our state subsidy has decreased just over 14%. Other revenues have decreased much more significantly, almost 50% decrease. And that's in red, and I have another slide that shows what those other revenues are. Most of them are state agency clients. So in 2009, we had a lot of students from Harbor Family Services coming to our school, and we got a lot of revenue. Now we're not getting much revenue, so that's most of that revenue loss. And then you can also see over time the relative impact between Camden and Rockport over time. Camden's impact has actually increased 25%, Rockport 8%.
Can I ask a question? The budget line that you had for those state agency for the state agency client revenues, it was only like 8,000 something dollars,
Yeah, not
right?
even that much.
And so, how many students do you have to times 8,600 by to get to $400,000? You said most of that
Yeah,
money.
it's not, but what's in there is not a per student cost. Like, so what we have right now, it's not because there's one student. The state agency client used to pay for administrative positions, teaching positions, all kinds of support services that are no longer needed.
Gotcha.
So it's a lot more than, it's literally not a per student
student,
cost,
okay.
but it's a variety of things. We used to be able to, submit and get reimbursed for a lot of expenses.
Thank you.
So that line, moved the wrong one. That line that was highlighted in red, so it's about $400,000, as Owen said, that has been reduced in state agency client. Our fund balance, we're using less of the fund balance than we used to. So over that 9 years, like this year, we'll be using 60,000 less than we were 9 years ago. Special ed tuition has also gone down. Federal main care payments have gone down, and then just some small miscellaneous. So that accounts for that over the past 9 years, that pretty significant reduction in revenues. This next graph shows a breakdown of how the money is spent. Most of it is that lavender slice, which is the biggest slice on there, is instruction. Special education is that magenta type plum color, about 14% in special education. And then debt service is 10%, ops and maintenance 14%. Those are the next two biggest pieces of our pie. Then it goes from there, so you can take a peek at that. We're gonna have a warrant article in addition to the budget article that's on there, that's going to ask that the school board be authorized to transfer up to $600,000 from unexpended balances at the end of this fiscal year and move that into the capital reserve fund. And to be able to expend up to $400,000 from that fund for unanticipated or emergency school facility capital needs, or most likely upfront building project expenses for the middle school. So typically, we ask to have funds moved into our capital reserve fund. We're asking for more than we typically ask for this year from taxpayers, because we know that if the bond passes, we are likely to have expenses that will be incurred before we get money from a bond payment. So we're asking for a little additional money so that we have the cash flow to be able to start expending some money that we would then reimburse ourselves, but we need to ask to spend the money. We have a very healthy fund balance, SAD 28. In moving this money into that balance, you'll see when I get to the middle school project, will mean that at the end of next year, so this time next year, we will have about $1.4 million in our capital reserve fund. And we expect to use 1.1 million of that to offset the taxpayer impact of a new building project. So while the new building project costs $26.3 million, the bond will be for $25.2 million because we have money in the bank. And this will put a little bit more money in that bank, but most of it would be used in case we need it to start the project. But I'll talk more about that when we get to the middle school project.
So with regards to this article, typically the town, who has the same deal going with their
Unassigned,
unassigned, we change the phrasing every year.
just to confuse you, and it's doing a good job,
Doing a
right?
good job. Which helps us not take out any TANs, tax anticipation notes. Do you guys feel, obviously you don't feel, but would you make a statement about that, taking 600 out of the undesignated funds for yourself doesn't put you in a tight situation with cash flow? Because
No.
that's really what it's about.
It does not. our fund balance is healthy enough that we would still have enough for our other cash needs, if that's what you're asking.
And I meant to start that question by saying, this town is very grateful for your flexibility in our payments to you, in getting that money to you.
Yeah.
What exactly does healthy mean?
Well, our auditors really look for us to have enough money that should our school close, like right now, if we decided to close SAD 28, we have to pay our teachers through the end of the summer, even though it's the next fiscal year. We need to have enough money to be able to pay all of our teachers through the summer. And that's what the auditors look for in your fund balance, that you have enough money in there that should you close down, you can pay all of your teachers. So in the SAD, we have that and then some. In fact, our auditors have suggested that we lower the amount of money we have in our fund balance, because in the SAD, there are many years that our budgets tend to be less tight than the high school's budget. We have more money left over at the end of the year, even though we use the same budgeting practices. For whatever reason, the SAD seems to have more money left over. So our fund balance has gotten pretty healthy. And so we can afford to do this and still pay our teachers in the very unlikely event that SAD 28 would cease to exist and close down. That did happen when the high school district was reformed. That district, kind of closed, and we had to do that with our teachers. In the CSD, we don't have enough money to pay our teachers for the summer should we close, and the auditors are suggesting that we build up that fund a little bit. It's so unlikely that that would be a scenario that you would face. So we're kind of asked to have that money just sitting there with unlikely to ever really need it. But it also enables us to have the money to operate before we get some of the revenues, for instance, from the town of Rockport that come into us. So. So I'm going to move on to the high school's requested budget, so for the 5-town CSD. So the target was that the board gave the administration was to come in at a 2.5% increase, no higher to the expense budget, and to come in at under 4% to the taxpayers. We came in at 2.63% to the expense budget and 3.7% to taxpayers.
And again, that's 3.7 as a overall.
Overall.
But individual towns have different hits
Yes.
depending on the
And you'll
formula.
see what those are momentarily. But yes, every town has a different impact. So enrollment at the high school has also been pretty stable. You can actually see that it's increased a little bit. We expect to have about 720 students next year. 715, 720. And that's a little bit more than we've had. I expect us to have around 720 students for the next 2 years and then drop back down to about 680 or 690, where I think we'll stay pretty stable for a while. And that, depends somewhat. We have a lot of students coming in from other towns, international students. That can vary a lot depending on where those numbers come in.
Are we still taking students from St. George?
Yes, we are. We'll have about 25 St. George students next year at our high school. In fact, because of that, you'll see in the tuition line that we have a 39% increase in our expected tuition revenues, because we're going to have more St. George students at our school than we've had in the past, because they're catching up. It's been enough years now that those numbers are increasing, because each freshman class, they've got a certain number coming in. When we started, there were far fewer juniors or seniors from St. George, but now, I can't remember, it's been maybe 3 or 4 years, but we're getting more at every grade level. So on the revenue side, we're using less of our carryover than we used last year. Like I said, we're actually trying to build up our fund balance, so we're not using as much of it. Our state contribution is going down by $48,000, and that is a result of the governor's proposed budget to eliminate system administration from school funding. And that impact on us was about a $48,000 revenue loss. We don't know if that's actually going to pass. If the system administration stays in the budget, then we will get that money back into our budget. We've lost some E-rate revenue. That's revenue that used to come with telephone companies and schools, and that revenue's just been lost because there just are far fewer landlines than there used to be, essentially. I already talked about tuition, just a little bit of other loss. Overall, we're expecting a reduction in our revenues of about 1.65%. And then again, our expenses by cost center. You can see at the very bottom, overall, it's a 2.63% increase, and each article is listed separately. And it's a $12.7 million budget overall.
That's a good question, Maria.
Yep.
The school administration budget went up more than almost anything else.
Yep, a big part of that reason is one of the assistant principals at the high school, part of his salary used to be charged to the counseling department because he did all the scheduling for the high school. He had been a counselor when he became at our school and did the scheduling as a guidance counselor. Then he moved into the assistant principal role, and he kept that function with him. So we always charged a part of his salary to the counseling department, which falls under 912 instruction, I think. And last year we hired a director of counseling, and we are moving scheduling back to the counseling's role. So we can't charge any of his salary any longer to counseling. So a large part of that is his full salary being charged to school administration.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on that? Are you guys ready to move on? Okay. So the taxpayer impact, Jeff had alluded to this before. You can see at the bottom of the chart, the impact to each town in our 5-town region. The high is Hope, which is an 8% increase. The low is Lincolnville, which is actually a 0.32% decrease. Rockport is a 4.03% increase. Camden is 5.03. Overall, it comes to 3.7.
Is this calculated purely on the number of students?
No, I was going to say, unlike the SAD, because the SAD is a minimum receiver and we essentially don't get state aid, the way it's broken down between Camden and Rockport is solely based on number of students in each town. Because at the high school, we're not minimum receivers because Hope and Appleton gets subsidy. It's a combination of valuation and number of students being sent. So it's a much more complex formula. So, it could be one of those could outweigh the other, but essentially it's based on those two things. What happened to your town's valuation in the past year and how many students relative to the whole pie are being sent from those towns. So if we look at that change over time for the high school, in that same 9-year period, the enrollment has increased 5.5%. The expense budget is just under 9%, so it's increased at a rate of a little less than 1% on average per year. State subsidies gone down pretty significantly, 28%, and our other revenues have gone down about 25%. And then you can see the impact to each of the towns over that period of time. So Appleton is now paying almost 50% more than they were paying. Camden's been pretty stable, 7%. Hope 19, Lincolnville 18, and Rockport again is pretty high, close to 50% increase over that time. And again, that is probably a function of both things: the valuation in that 9-year span and total numbers of students from Rockport as in relation to the total number of students at the other, at the other towns.
Are you a year behind on the valuation? Are you using 2 years ago numbers?
Yes, and they use a 3-year average.
A 3-year average on top of looking back 2 years, okay. So for Rockport, with our devaluation last year, we should see that next year-ish because it's amortized over 3 years. Thank you.
The distribution of money is pretty similar in this district as it was in the other district. Instruction accounts for the majority of the expenses. It's the biggest slice at about 40%. Special ed is that lighter plum color. It's about 9%. In addition, in here, it's just to the left of that plum color that's kind of vanilla, is the Midco School of Technology or vocational education is about, it's 8% of the budget. And, debt service, ops, and maintenance come in at the next two highest. We are going to have a warrant article for the high school as well. And you'll see that we're asking for far less money to be transferred, up to $125,000 from unexpended balances at the end of the year to the capital reserve fund. And we're asking to spend up to $200,000 from the capital reserve fund. So that capital reserve fund will be, I can't remember exactly what it's going to be, on the order of $400,000 that we have in the capital reserve fund after we transfer 125. And we're asking, excuse me, we're asking to spend up to $200,000. We know we want to spend about $100,000. And then $100,000 is for some unforeseen thing that could occur that we won't have to go back to taxpayers for. And there are projects listed there that we know we want to spend. That's about $109,000 from the capital reserve fund for those projects for next year. So as we think about the future and we think about our budget and we plan ahead for future years, the major considerations that we are thinking about is the impact that the Midco School of Technology project, that building project, will have on our budget. We will see a significant increase to our costs for Midco School of Technology in our five-town CSD budget. We're expecting that to be somewhere around $580,000 to $600,000 a year, which will be a pretty significant increase. We currently pay about $1.1 million for our students to attend Midco School of Technology. So that will increase, close to 50% of that. So that will be a big impact on our high school's budget. We don't know exactly when we'll see the full impact of that. Next year, we'll probably, not this coming year's budget, but the following year's budget, we'll probably see a pretty big increase. And, I would expect that it's going to be very difficult to keep our high school budget at the levels that we've had it at for the past several years, because that's such a large expense that we can't control. So that will have a big impact. The middle school building project will, not through the five-town budget, but through the SAD budget, will have an impact on Camden and Rockport taxpayers should it pass. So we're also keeping our eye on that and thinking about how we can best mitigate that cost. And there are also all kinds of things changing at the state and federal level in terms of education policies, funding, that we just don't know what's going to happen. The funding formula is being looked at. System administration is being suggested that it is cut out. It might not get cut out. We don't know what other changes might come. We don't know how that will impact the subsidy. There is talk that federal title money might dry up. We get about $180,000 in Title I money. And we get about $60,000 in Title II funds. So together, it's close to $250,000 that if we didn't get that money, it would have an impact. The Title I money pays for the Title I program at the elementary school. We have 4 staff members whose salaries are paid through that, and it's intervention services for students who are struggling. Title II funds is mostly professional development. So whatever happens with title money, if it dries up, it could have an impact on us. And then we don't really know the impact that changes at the federal or state level in regard to completely changing the playing field with public schools, with vouchers, school choice, charter schools, and how those might impact. We're in great shape in that we are a highly desirable school district. And, so I don't worry about whether or not we're going to exist in the future. We have people coming to us from all over the country who have paid for their kids, have only been in private schools until they move here. And we consistently hear that their children's experience here is better than it was at the private schools where they came from in California, Washington, D.C., Florida, wherever it is. So I don't worry about that, but we don't know what will happen if there are vouchers and anyone can go anywhere they want. I would expect there'd be a lot of demand for our schools, and I don't know how we would manage that or if we have the capacity to manage that. So those are things that we think about as we head into the future with trying to plan. Makes it difficult, though, because there are a lot of moving targets.
Thank you. You had some good numbers for budget increase for the School of Technology building. Do you know what the projected budget increase would be for the middle school project?
I do, and it's going to be in my next presentation. So are you willing to wait?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So are there any other questions about the budgets?
In terms of charter schools and school choice vouchers and what have you, does that become a bit of a seller's market from the perspective of a school district like ours?
Well, it's an interesting question because we would run into a capacity issue
Pretty quickly.
very quickly. We don't need, I believe that we're in a state whose population is declining and whose school-age population is declining, but we're in this little nexus that is not happening. Like our town populations aren't rapidly declining, nor are our school populations, because we're in a high demand area. We live in a place where a lot of people want to live, and our schools are schools that a lot of people want to attend. So I feel like we're able to maintain despite what's happening around us. But if there were really choice to go anywhere, I don't know if we'd need to market ourselves because we're essentially at capacity in all of our schools, physical building space. And if we had 50 more students at each of our schools, we'd probably have to build every one of the 2 schools that have already been built were built to take an addition, like to add on if we needed more classrooms, and we're going to do the middle school the same way. But would have to do something because we really don't have the capacity to have a huge influx of students. So it's going to be an interesting kind of dynamic.
And presently, with the numbers being the way they are you maintaining the levels of outside tuition paying students, not St. George, but all the way outside of our region that was a feature a number of years ago? Has that program declined, or is that still going?
No, I'd say because a number of schools around us have separated from the district with which they combined, that it's provided an opportunity for us because we have Jefferson, Northport, and St. George are all towns that don't have a high school, that the towns pay tuition for their students to go to whatever school the students choose. So we have a lot of students from St. George choosing to attend our school, and we have handfuls of kids from Northport and Jefferson. So I'd say those numbers have increased because Northport didn't used to have a choice, and now they have a choice. So we're maintaining the numbers of students who have tuitioned in, In addition, we have students who are tuitioning in just because their families want them to attend our school, again, from a 25-mile radius of parents who are paying tuition. So I'd say that's, if anything, that's increased in the recent past, but that probably is more of a factor of school districts paying us tuition, and private tuition's probably just been pretty steady.
The tuition that, like St. George, Jefferson, and Northport pay, isn't that set by the State Department of Education? They've got a formula?
It is pretty much, and the formula is that a district will pay whichever of these two costs is less, either the per pupil cost or the state average tuition. So we are a district that has a lot of programming, and we have invested a lot in education. And for instance, at the high school, our per pupil cost is on the order of $17,700. The state average is $10,870 or something. So the lower of those two is the state average. So when students, for instance, we have students from Cushing who attend our school, and they're paying the state average tuition to attend our high school. Same with Northport, same with Jefferson. St. George is a little bit different because there's also a stipulation that you pay the lower of those two rates unless the sending school district agrees to pay you more. And so with St. George, we have a written contract and a memorandum that they can send us a certain number of students each year. And we were able to negotiate a slightly higher price than the state tuition price because they're also paying us a debt service payment to help offset our debt service. So they're paying a little bit more, not a whole lot more, but a little bit more. So there is some flexibility in a situation like that where we have an agreement and we guarantee a certain number of spots that you do have flexibility to charge a little bit more. But essentially, it's set by the state. So the middle school building project. So this is a rendering of the new school and the view from Knowlton Street. And this is the view from the parent drop-off loop. Just below the center right side of the page, you'll see another piece of pavement that's like a semicircle. That's the bus loop. So the bus loop would be further up Knowlton Street, closer to when you enter Knowlton Street. And now there's a bird's eye view that I'll show you in a minute, but that's the view you'd see from Knowlton Street. We worked hard to have it be a view that, and have it have a look and feel that fit in as best we could with a neighborhood, given that it is a school that is, on the order of 85,000 square feet. It's not exactly the size of a home, but we worked hard to make it fit in with a neighborhood using materials and the view from Knowlton Street as minimalist as we could make it. There's a lot more to the school behind what you see, and you would see, as you went down Knowlton Street and then you turned around and looked back, you'd see the rest of the school. But when you're entering Knowlton Street and driving past the school, that's pretty much all you'd see.
You have pitched roofs.
Just on this side, to fit in with the
you
neighborhood.
burst my bubble.
Sorry.
I love pitched roofs.
So just on this side, we have pitch roofs to try to fit in with the neighborhood. To the far right, it's right now got green board and batten on it, is the cafeteria. Then as you're moving left, the part with that slanted roof, the shed roof kind of, is the entrance to the school. So whether you're being dropped off by the bus or by a parent, you'd enter that same entrance. So there'd be one entrance to the school. And then as you keep moving left, right now those are shingles, and then clapboards on the end part where it's white, and that's the administrative section of the building. And that has the main office, principal, assistant principal, guidance counselor, nurse's office, conference room.
functional second floor where the dormers are, or?
The dormers, I think it's mostly ventilation up there. It's not actually a floor. Those are vents, not even windows on those dormers.
And the bobsled run is down the
Yeah,
shed roof,
buddy.
Yes.
bouncing off the first. Perfect.
So
About bloody time we got a bobsled run.
we put a new school on the ballot because when we reached out to the community and did a lot of legwork, finding out what the community could support, nearly everybody that we talked to, once they understood the issue, felt that a new school was the most prudent approach. And so the committee did a lot of that work, listened to the community, got that message. The committee recommended to the board that we put a new school back on the ballot, and then in the fall, late fall, the board decided and voted to put a new school back on the ballot. So that's why it's there. When it was defeated the first time, we went back out and listened to try to learn why it was defeated. And what we learned, not for every person, but for the majority of people that we talked to, we really came to the conclusion it was a failure of communication. People didn't understand what the issue was because most people, once they understood, said, oh, it makes the most sense to build new. It's the best use of our money. It makes the most sense both financially and academically or educationally to build new. And it's a really valuable investment in our community and our children's future.
And if you address it someplace else, you can just say later on, but what went into the decision-making because when I left the visioning committee, the plan was for November of 2017. Why'd the switch?
Okay, that actually is not in here, so it's a good question to ask. We made the switch for a couple of reasons. One reason was we went to the State Department of Education and had a talk with the person who runs the school construction process. We wanted to learn about the school state funding and how likely it would be for us to ever get state funding and kind of get a lay of the landscape with that. And we learned that it would be unlikely for us to ever get state funding. And in the course of that conversation, one of the things that he shared with us was that there's going to be a surge of school construction in the state of Maine. And if we waited until November, we would probably miss being ahead of that curve. But he suggested that we go to vote in March or April, but we didn't want to do another non-typical vote time because we got a lot of criticism the last time when we went in February. So we decided to move it to June to be ahead of that curve. It would save us money. He predicted that there would be a real high demand for contractors and that people were going to have to be going outside the state to find contractors, which would drive up costs. And we wanted to be ahead of that curve because we wanted to minimize the cost of the project. That was a large part of the reason why we went. For the architects, it was much more beneficial for us to go now than in November. November only gives them a window of like 8 months to do a lot of the bidding process and get a lot of things done. Going in June would give them an extra 4 months of good work to prepare for the project to be able to start next spring. So it was advantageous for them to save costs and to get the work done that we needed to. It was advantageous for taxpayers to have a lower cost overall project. And then we also reasoned that we've done a lot of work in the past, particularly I'd say 12 months. And we felt it would be hard to maintain that momentum during the summertime when people kind of dissipate, the audience dissipates, the workers dissipate. And we just, concluded that it would just make more sense for us to go to vote in June. So we switched it to the June vote.
Thank you.
So there are a number of benefits of a new school. The primary one being it's the most fiscally responsible thing we can do. The school building that currently exists there is in really rough shape. And we don't feel it's a good use of money to spend patching it up. It's kind of throwing good money after bad, putting money into a sinking ship. In addition, interest rates have been at historic lows. They're rising. They're probably going to continue rising. But right now, money is cheaper than it will be in the future. Construction costs rise every year. We felt that this was the lowest cost option was acting now instead of waiting. And, because if the bond does not pass, we will all have to still pay a lot of money to maintain the building that we currently have. And at the end of the day, we're going to have a lot of problems left in that building. And so it might mean in 20 years, people come back out to voters to build a new school. And over this time period, it would cost a lot more money than if we simply acted now. So we just feel like it's the most fiscally responsible thing to do. And honestly, that's what's driving this whole project. That the best use of taxpayer money is to build a new building now. There are other benefits. Educationally, there are definitely benefits, but those aren't the driving forces. The driving force is trying to be fiscally responsible. We will have significantly reduced operating costs. The building will have a much smaller footprint. Right now, there's about 120,000 square feet. The new building is going to be just under 85,000 square feet. It'll be a much more efficient design, much more efficient materials. Right now, literally in the wintertime, half the building has windows open because kids are sweltering because the heat is blasting in those classrooms. And you walk to the other end of the building and students have hats and mittens and coats on the same day because the heat's not reaching that part of the building. Just incredibly inefficient systems exist in that building. So we expect a reduction of about $300,000 a year in operating costs. A significant benefit is increased safety. The traffic situation is what I would consider pretty horrendous. It's been improved. When many people may know, I was principal of the middle school for 8 years, and it was particularly bad when I got there because parents and buses dropped off in the exact same location right in front of the front door on Knowlton Street. So you'd have cars and buses interspersed, kids hopping out of cars everywhere. At the end of the day, students literally would leave from Upper Knowlton Street and they'd skateboard zigzagging in between cars and buses, on bikes, walking, kids everywhere. And I just thought, this is not okay. And we ended up separating the bus loop and the parent drop-off loop. Now buses drop off out front where they've always dropped off, and parents go into another loop. Not all of our parents comply, and we still have kids hopping out on Knowlton Street in the middle of cars going, and at the end of the day, it's also hard to regulate students as much as we'd like to of how they're leaving school. It's an accident waiting to happen, and a lot of people have said, well, it's not really that bad because nobody's been hurt yet. And I think that is not how I operate. I try to prevent things from happening rather than waiting until it happens and then acting. And clearly, it is not a safe situation with pedestrians and car traffic because the front entrance is on the main street. It's 10 feet from the road. The new building sets it back something like 80 feet from the road. So it just will be a totally different situation and will be much safer. In addition, because the school was never designed as one singular school, there are all kinds of long, empty corridors connecting the wings of the building that are not near anybody's classroom, that are totally unsupervised. That is where, if bullying is going to happen in schools, it happens in places like unsupervised hallways, in places where there aren't adults. We can't put adults, there aren't enough adults to go around. Adults need to be in the hallways by their rooms. And we've just got long corridors and all kinds of hiding places. If you were a middle schooler, you'd love our school because there are places to disappear all over the place. So that's a safety issue. In addition, the ambient health leaves a lot to be desired. The ventilation system is a hodgepodge of things from no outside air circulation to our current band room is in the old mini gym space. And when the band moved into that room 3 or 4 years ago, because it exceeded the capacity of the band room that it had been in, so it moved to the mini gym. And when we moved there, We recognize there's no ventilation in this room. We need to ventilate it. We're going to have 100 kids in this room at times. So, using Yankee ingenuity, we went and got the old fans from Rockport Elementary School that had been torn down, vintage 1961 or something, and we jury-rigged and installed those fans in the band room. So that's like the air exchange in the mini gym right now. And the reason why we did that is because that happened right before the first vote, and we did not want to spend, let's say, $320,000 putting in proper ventilation in the school, because we didn't know if the school was going to be torn down in 5 years, and we didn't want to spend that kind of money. And for the past 5 years or so, that's what we've been doing. We don't want to spend a lot of money if something's going to be torn down. So we've been budgeting for what should happen, but we've been jury-rigging and getting by with Yankee ingenuity in banking that money. And I talked about the $1.1 million we're going to have at the end of next year. It's because we've been banking that money. Because we also recognize that if the bond does not pass, then we've got $1.1 million we can immediately put into the middle school to address some of these significant areas that we've just been putting Band-Aids on because we don't want to waste money. So we've got a lot of benefits would happen with air quality and health-related issues. We've had leaks after leak after leak in the middle school, and I'm sure we could find lots of things if we looked hard. There are some educational opportunities. The spaces would be designed more for 21st century learning, many more opportunities for collaboration, for creativity, building community. Right now it's tough because the students are very spread out in different wings of the building, and it's hard to unify the school. In the new design, the whole academic wing is in one area that will facilitate a lot of things, and we're building in spaces for collaboration and creativity. And there's a lot of community value in the new school. Obviously, our high school and our elementary school attract people to the community. The facility itself attracts people. Right now, our middle school has a great reputation, but the facility actually detracts people. We've had people walk into that school and literally tell us that they would never send their kid to this school. They can't believe what poor shape it's in, and that, like, wow, the high school and the elementary school are so nice. What's going on with this school? And we'll wait until our child's in high school. We'll send them someplace else for now. So the value of having a school system that attracts those people to our towns, it attracts young families who add to the workforce. It attracts retirees who just want a healthy community to live in. And healthy communities mean strong libraries, strong social services, strong police departments, YMCAs, all the things that we have, including good schools. And we just feel like it's an incredibly important part of the overall vitality of the community. So, to Owen's question earlier, the tax impact of the new school. So, I just have to see if arrows appear here if I press this.
Hey.
Okay, they were supposed to appear sooner. It doesn't look like they do. So, if you look at the top column on the left, a yes vote, the project cost, as I said, is $26.3 million. We will have $1.1 million to defray that cost, so we're going to bond for $25.2 million. The impact that's going to have on taxpayers per 100,000 is close to $100. I actually don't have it in front of me and can't read it from here, but it's 97 maybe and 99 or something.
97 and 99.
So $97 in Camden per 100,000 and 99 in Rockport. Thank you. And if you look to the right, if we don't approve the new middle school, we've had engineering studies done, and we estimate, this has actually been confirmed by an engineering study that was done about 5 years ago, and the architects have corroborated that work. We would need to spend about $16.5 million addressing issues that exist in the current middle school. Either way, we're going to have to spend money. So if it's voted down, we're going to need to spend a lot of money, and that tax impact is about $60 per 100,000. So the difference is about $40 per 100,000 right now for a new school versus not having a new school and just patching what exists. And if you look down to the second set of numbers, that compares it over a 20-year life cycle. So we just looked at a 20-year horizon. And if we built a new school now, in 20 years, that school would still be going strong. It's really helpful to imagine what the high school looks like right now, because the high school is just about 20 years old. So if we think ahead 20 years, a new middle school would look about like the high school does. And I think most people still consider that a pretty new school. If we don't do this and all we do is patch, we will still have the traffic safety issues, the long corridors that are unsupervised, all fields that don't drain and that we can't play on. All kinds of problems will still exist, and probably at the end of that 20 years would need a new school. The difference in cost at the end of 20 years, if we build a new school now, it'll be $7 million more than if we don't build a new school right now. The only difference is in 20 years, if we don't do it now, we'd probably have to spend $45 million building a new school. We just think it makes a lot more economic sense to do that now instead of waiting and patching what we have and still needing a new school in 20 years.
Looking at that another way, would you say, and taking the example of the high school, would you say the worst aspect of the high school, you know, whatever it is at the high school that went downhill the fastest, is still better than the best thing that the middle school has right now on the physical plant basis?
Do you mean for the new high school?
For the new high school, you're saying look 20 years down the road,
Yeah.
and here's our example.
I'd say there is no worst aspect of the high school right now. Like, the worst thing at the high school right now is probably, like, one of the things in the high school's budget is to upgrade some controls that control some of the systems. And that software package needs to be upgraded. That's probably, and it's kind of messed up some of our electrical bills because some pumps weren't working right. It's probably the worst thing that's going on
Right.
at the high school.
So at its worst, it's still way, way, way better than
You,
what you have
you
in the
just,
middle
I
school
mean,
now.
you can't even begin to compare the differences because the high school doesn't even, I mean, I could list 50 things at the middle school that are worse than anything at the high school. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, just putting a different perspective on it.
Yeah.
So I guess that it didn't necessarily answer my question, because I just wanted to see like the similarity of increase to budget numbers, and then I'd be able to compare the increase to the school budget for the Voc Tech school and the increase for that. Because this tells me what the increases on my taxes are gonna be, like personally, but not necessarily, so I can't necessarily compare the two.
My business manager just told me it's about $2 million in the first year. In the first year, we expect would be the highest payment.
And the other one was on the high end, 700,
600.
600,000.
And in the 600,000 is compared to the current $1.1 million cost. And this is, you know, a 13 point whatever million dollar budget.
And that'll go down as the debt service goes down.
The interest goes down.
Yeah.
You know, that big principal payment will still be there, but they will go down over the course of the 25 years, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any,
And that, I didn't think that that was the end, but then there are just some notes. This is what Kathy just mentioned. Tax impact will decrease as interest payments decrease. And as I said before, we are projecting a reduction in expenses of about $300,000. And we have the ability to lower that debt service, and we'll look carefully at that with careful use of our fund balance and capital maintenance reserve. We're already planning to use $1.1 million. And if we can afford to defray some of that impact that we're talking about through the following year, using a little bit more of our capital reserve fund, then we will do that. still maintaining a balance that is solid, but if we can afford to do that, we are planning to do what we can to help defray the cost to taxpayers. And so this is a view of the school from the bus loop, so just a slightly different view of the front side of the building. That is a rendition of what's behind. It's kind of like a T. So what you saw was the top of the T, and this comes out from the center. This is the academic wing that's in the back of the building. Those colors may not be the colors, so those things have not been decided on yet, but essentially, that's the shape that it would take. To the far right is the gymnasium, and then as you move left, the other projection is the library on the top and the art room on the bottom. And then the rest of it is all classroom spaces. It'd be 3 floors.
And the monolithic wall on the gymnasium is designed as an outside surface on which to bounce things.
That is most likely what we would do, is have that be a surface to bounce things off.
Children.
Not children, but
Gotta be a technical term for that.
handball, whatever.
Okay.
So there are, I'm just saying to my colleagues, there are a bunch of very interesting things designed into this building.
Yeah, actually, you can't see it here, and I don't think you can see it there either. Maybe on the site plan you can, but to the right of the gym, there's about a 17% slope. We're actually going to try to build the playground into the slope so we can incorporate some features of the natural grade of the property into a playground. And it butts up against the woods on the other side of the building, which will afford some interesting things. You know, the Riverwalk won't be that far from the other side of the building. And then in the foreground are the playing fields. And that's like a floor plan, and you can see the front part of the building. The bottom is where Knowlton Street would be. The whole front section are, other than the administrative wing, which is in the purple, the rest of it are public spaces. So you've got the cafeteria, a mini theater that's in orange, the gymnasium that's in white. So it'd be really easy to have community functions there without going into the academic part of the space.
Any more questions?
I have a general question, but it's not related to. I have 2 questions. One, I guess it's totally understandable that you wouldn't necessarily talk about like educational performance, because I think we're here primarily to talk about numbers. But maybe you could just touch on, so I get the numbers of it, but what do we get for it?
Well, I personally think the most compelling arguments for what we get for it is not wasting money on a building that's failing.
Oh, no. I meant like bigger, broader, K through 12. How are our academics doing? How is our performance as related to other high schools around the state, other school districts around the state? Not necessarily the school specifically, but how is our academic programming holding up for us? What do we get for all the budget numbers that we talked about?
Oh, so not necessarily the middle
Not
school thing.
necessarily
I mean,
the middle school specifically, just like in general, how are
Yeah.
our performances? How are the teachers? Are we getting good responses from teachers? Just how are our schools doing?
Well, you know, I sort of indirectly touched on that because there's high demand for people wanting to come to our school district, which is a sign, certainly, of something. We're doing really well. Our high school, like a report came out this year recently, niche.com, that rates schools on all kinds of factors, school climate, food, you name it, niche.com. And we were ranked the 5th highest, best school in the state. And the schools that were ahead of us, Yarmouth, Falmouth, Cape Elizabeth, and one other one, maybe it was Greeley, I can't remember. So we perform really well. Our middle school and elementary school also perform well. We have, if we look, somebody recently asked me this in terms of teacher retention. I just interviewed for a job. And they asked me about why people leave. And I started thinking about it. And we hardly ever have anybody who leaves because they want a job someplace else. People leave because they're retiring. They leave because they just got married and their husband got a job in North Carolina, so they're moving. You know, people who are in our district appreciate the things about our district and stay. We attract excellent candidates. We have excellent staff members, well-educated, highly motivated, very dedicated. No matter how you look at our schools, we stack up against, you know, the best of them in terms of the breadth of our program, the satisfaction of students in our school, the satisfaction that parents have with our school system. So by almost any measure, certainly any comparable measure, we're doing exceptionally well. There are things people might say, well, you know, my child got bullied. There is a little bit of bullying going on.
That's out of your
But that happens in every school. We have students who come to us, you know, when I was principal at the middle school, I met with the new students every year, always ask them, what do they like about this school compared to their last school, wherever they came from? Inevitably, every student said, kids are so much nicer here than at the school that I came from. So, I mean, you know, we've got exceptional schools.
Can I ask one last question? And this is,
Please hurry.
so here's my like super quick soapbox. About roughly 2/3 of my tax dollars go to the school system, roughly, which is okay. One of the things that's been a little frustrating as our child has gone through the public school system, we're trying to understand more aspects of it. It's difficult sometimes to get all the bits and pieces that make up the school picture. An example being that, you know, us as a 1/3 of the tax budget, we have everything live streamed. We have to give certain notifications before meetings. An example is that, correct me if I'm wrong, an email was sent out today for an emergency meeting to approve the new principal for the high school tonight. And that would never fly with us to give less than 24 hours notice to approve a new principal. And you did approve them tonight? Mm-hmm. So I guess that's just, can you maybe respond to that? Because I don't know how much we would have to invest to have you all have good live streaming capabilities. Because I have a thing that I could go to on Islesboro on Thursday, but I can't because my wife has to go to the school board meeting in person, because the only way she can get that information is to go in person. So can we talk about having meetings be live streamed?
The board is talking about that. So in fact, at the last CSD board meeting, that was a topic of discussion, and there are board members who have been working with one of the Rockport Select Board on that very issue. So there is an awareness of that, and there is a desire by many members of the board to figure out how to have more people have access to the board meetings.
Can you also address I don't know if things are super different between how we have to operate and how you have to operate, but we have to give certain notifications before meetings. We try to give ample amount of time for folks to go over the budget before we approve it. It has been a little concerning to see things notified so quickly before action is taken on that, with the example being, there was an email sent out this morning about approving the principal tonight.
Can you think of any other examples? Because I think today was an exception.
When the budget was released last time before your meeting for approval by the school board, it was only given like 3 or 4 days of when it was released to when it was approved.
Yeah, one of the things that is always challenging for us, our budget process is incredibly transparent, and the board starts reviewing the budget at finance committee meetings and at board meetings, starting at the first meeting in February. So it's granted, those meetings might not have been televised, but those discussions are happening in a public, transparent forum starting in February, and we have had a large number of meetings about the budget. So while oftentimes there are people who feel like something came, like I just got notified of this, Well, that you might not have noticed the agendas from the last 4 meetings that had this topic on them where we discussed this. So, I mean, I would say that we have the same requirements for notice of meetings. Today was an emergency meeting. I think you have the right to call an emergency meeting as well without the required notice. So that's a very rare thing that happens. It's maybe I know it's the first time that's happened this year, so it's not a common occurrence. So, you know, we don't live stream, but we certainly are, I feel like we're incredibly transparent. When we send stuff to the press, we have a huge distribution list of every meeting that we have.
Why was there an emergency meeting? Why did he have to get approved so quickly? I have no idea. And it just seemed odd, but I'm sure there's a good reason for it.
Well, the next board meeting where it could regularly be approved is a month from now. And we really need that person to be on board, be able to sign a contract before the school year ends. And many members of the board were already congregated today for a different meeting. So it just made a lot of sense while they were already congregated to have them meet about that topic.
Thank you.
They have to make the same open meeting requirements that we do, notifications and everything. We tend to push it out and make our notifications a lot earlier than is what is minimally required. But you can call an emergency meeting. If you call too many of them, people will start to take notice. But, you know, it is possible to call one. And you weren't on the board at the time, but we had a number of emergency meetings a few years ago. They all ended up in executive sessions, but again, you need to provide that, as best you can. So,
And there is, not to minimize your request and your observations, because they are true, and in years past, the particular personalities of the board were not as open as they are now to the potential and possibility of streaming. There has been in years past the expression of, if they don't, we want them to show up. We don't want them to do that. But be that as it may, more than this board, a tremendous amount of their work does get done in committees, and so Matt's trying to figure out how they can jump in halfway into the water.
this is not something
This
that
is
we
not
need to
appropriate
be,
for this, but
we don't need to
well,
be discussing.
except that it is a question on the minds of people, the citizens.
And I have the superintendent.
Yeah, so.
So, ask
Okay.
But much the same way it took us a while to get to where we are, it will take less of a while for the
Wait,
school
weren't
board.
you on the school board?
I was, and
You were
that's
one
actually
of the naysayers, huh?
no. I was a thorn in the rear end of most people.
Okay. Do we have any other questions regarding the middle school plan? Then thank you very much for coming and sharing with us tonight.
Thank you guys
This is
for
very
your time.
informative. Thank you. And I do believe that Kate McClellan has arrived. My apologies, we thought you were gonna be able to be here just a little bit earlier, so we moved ahead with this, and we will now take under advisement your application to serve on the planning board as an alternate, and I see that John Alexander is here, providing moral support, I would assume. So,
Sure, thanks for having me.
yeah,
Happy to
and
answer whatever questions.
thank you
Could
for
you do me
this.
one favor? There's a keyboard next to you.
Yes.
Could you hit Control? No, just hit Escape.
Escape.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's perfect.
Welcome.
He's gotta get us back to the right places.
No worries.
Yeah,
all I
and I thank you for this very complete and legible application.
I think that was probably John's doing, not mine, to be honest.
Well, John, thank you. Okay. We'll keep passing the buck? Oh, okay. But you understand how the alternate process works? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, I've sat down with John and Jamie and talked about the position and what it requires and my role.
And do you want to put into your own words the reason you'd want to suffer this abuse?
I would love to. I've been a long time well, not long time right now, resident of Rockport, but I grew up here starting around 8 years old. I moved from Camden, have lived in the area my whole life. I've kind of always been coming back and forth. And I'm very politically active and on many different levels, but would love to be more involved at the local level and just learn, honestly, just learn kind of how the processes at the local level work. I'm by no means not an expert in planning or city planning, but would love to really just take a learning perspective and be a part of lending my perspective as someone who's lived here for a while and grew up here in whatever way I can be helpful.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sure.
So you're going for an alternate position.
Yes.
If we get into a position where someone resigns from the planning board
Yes.
and we can approve you, but we haven't heard explicitly from you that you would like to be a full member, not just an alternate member,
Sure.
can we approve you?
This actually came
Because
up.
it just happened
Oh,
earlier
really?
tonight
Okay.
before you came where we haven't heard from that individual.
Got
We know
it.
full well that she wanted to do it, but if we get in that same predicament with you, would you like to be a full-fledged member of the planning board?
I would love to. Sure.
Start
He-
doing
He's
this.
preemptively engaging
Preemptively,
you fully
got it.
without even
Signing me
voting.
up
on
for
it.
Beginning
more work.
stages of a new policy.
Great. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd like to be informed of it, but yeah.
Oh wait, so that throws a whole.
Informed
that.
of the change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, we'd be sure to do that.
that'd be great.
Jeff, do you have any questions?
No, I'm quite satisfied, thank you.
Yeah, I
Great.
appreciate you coming through with all these answers quickly and
Of course.
giving us your unvarnished opinion of how willing you are to serve.
Sure. Yeah. I'm really excited to be living back in the area and have a very passionate interest in local government. So I would love to learn more about it and be helpful if I can be.
Are you related to Nella?
Nell does my mom.
Oh, okay, because I know the McClellans on Summer Street.
Yes, I'm living with them currently, but we'll
okay.
probably be moving somewhere else in Rockport shortly. Yeah,
Okay.
Bill's my dad.
So I move to appoint Kate McClellan to the alternate position of the planning board for a term of 3 years, are we saying?
No, June 18,
June 19,
2018.
2018.
At least that's what,
Whoa, figure those months out.
well,
All right. A year and a month.
Second.
moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank
Great,
you.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Golf clap.
Yeah, because I see here Ted's term expires this June 2017.
Gotcha.
So, okay, we now move to our next item of new business, which is consideration of a request from Bobby Morgan of Flatbread Company to expand their liquor license to include serving alcohol in the fenced patio area at 399 Commercial Street.
Thank you.
And I assume you are Bobby Morgan.
Yes.
And somewhere we have a fine drawing.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, because we did
Wicked
receive the
good
full
drawing.
packet here. There you go. Is there any way you can flip that on its
There
side?
is a way, if I could see that far.
Maybe we can't.
Yeah, screw it.
Maybe we can just
That's
shrink
Route 1
it
on
a
the
little
right.
bit. If I understand this correctly, the area you're gonna be fencing in is the side toward Route 1.
Yes.
Okay.
The front lawn.
And, oh, we had it here. I'm slow. I thought I saw an item. Oh, yeah, here we go. Yep, I was checking to make sure we had the recommendation from Police Chief, and he does, and he has reviewed the request and recommend that it be included, that the area be monitored by staff members.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. And this you want to start when? Lost that part.
We'd like to,
Stops raining.
as soon as possible. We'd like to get the okay to be able to serve alcohol out there before we put the tables in bocce court or games out there, whatever we decide to do. But we want to get the okay that we're able to serve out there before we do that.
I have zero problem with you serving booze. I only have one question.
Yeah.
The fire pit that close to the corner of the house?
Yep.
I mean, it's all good. The fire chief says it's okay.
Maybe a bench
I
between them.
wouldn't put a fire pit that close to my house, but
Right. Well, you know what, as you can see, that sketch was done very quickly, and it hasn't.
your landscape
Actually,
architect
to
didn't
scale.
look it over.
And Alan hasn't given all okays on everything.
I'm sure
you
it'll
know.
be just fine.
the
And
placement
my wife,
of everything,
My
so-
wife says to thank you for the pizzas, and I'll thank you for the pizzas as
Okay.
well.
Thank you.
For the Keep
No.
Rockport beautiful.
Yep.
I don't have any
Yeah,
problem with
see,
it.
if that's 35 feet, and you put that over here, I mean, that's probably gotta be at least 25 feet.
It says in the corner, not drawn to scale.
Anyway,
I don't have
Okay.
any problems with it.
Do you have any questions? No?
No.
Then, here we go. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the proposed changes as presented by Bobby Morgan of Flatbread Pizza, doing business as American Flatbread Rockport LLC, and letter to be sent to the Liquor Commission that his request be approved.
second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Music and stuff, is not part of this, is not part of the plan?
Not on the front lawn, no.
Yeah,
No.
okay,
Yeah, and we do have
We have
the,
the letter in s-
the letter in our packet.
right.
And actually, when I saw this, it made a ton of sense, because I oftentimes see kids running around out there, so this seems to be a pretty natural progression.
And just to, cars drive by us so fast, just to see a little bit of action out on the front lawn, I think will help business also. So.
Okay. So, no further questions? All in favor? And we will have that letter being sent off very soon.
Super. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for everything you do.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, the next item here is to sign the warrant. And really all this, well, we do need to have a motion to approve Tuesday, June 13th and Wednesday, June 14th.
I move to approve Tuesday, June 13th, 2017, and Wednesday, June 14th, 2017, as both days for our town meeting,
Yes.
As the voting and town meeting.
as the voting and town meeting dates. The
Second.
13th being the vote, 14th being.
It's
town
all
meeting.
considered town meeting.
Perfect, for town meeting.
Yeah, and we've got any number of pieces of paper that we need to sign on this one, too. Do we have to sign those right now while we are in session, or can we sign those after? Okay. So, we have the motion to approve, been seconded. No further discussion, all in favor? That is a vote. The next and this comes up because it's part of the contract, and to make sure that we keep everything straight, we need to approve the town manager attending the MTCMA, I think that's Maine Town City Management Association, at Sunday River, August 9th through 11th, and the International Something Managers Association in San Antonio, Texas, October 22nd and 25th.
I move to approve the town manager attendance of the annual MTCMA conference at Sunday River from August 9th through 11th, and the ICMA annual conference in San Antonio, Texas, from October 22nd through the 25th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. What does the C in ICMA stand for?
City Managers Association.
Oh, okay. You can't have them change that to town and city? Maine recognizes it.
Yeah, that's a little easier.
Okay, all in favor? That is good. I would now, did I miss something here? I thought we had one more.
Wastewater.
Nope, I guess we didn't. I'd entertain a motion to go in as wastewater commissioners.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? You should have voted against that. That way we couldn't go in. And we have Mr. Lane here
Billy
to
waited
explain
for
to
so
us. All in favor of being?
Yeah.
Okay, we already did, that's right. We have a request for a privately paid sewer extension up on Spear Street. Want to walk us through this?
Yes, good evening. I'm Bill Lane from Gartley and Dorsey Engineering and Surveying. We represent Douglas Odell, who owns 4 Spear Street, and who is in a contract to sell his property at this time. And it was discovered that he has a malfunctioning septic system, and as depicted, there's really not an adequate place on his property to design and install a conventional on-site wastewater disposal system, even implementing the replacement system standards. So the proposal is to construct approximately 295 feet of new gravity sewer line up Spear Street from the existing terminal manhole and stub that exists, and run a new gravity line in. As we move past the 2 adjacent parcels on the south side of Spear Street, we would install new stubs for future connection for that vacant parcel, and then for the Vanderkeef residents at 10 Spear Street. There's a profile in that plan set that depicts, further on from that is the design. That plan that Jeff has got us connected on depicts the geotechnical information that was secured, and then this following plan depicts the extension of the gravity sewer main, the location of those stubs. Further on, there's a sheet with profiles, and
You're gonna make me
I was
turn.
just going to point that out to enumerate that we're going to construct this system as shallow as we can, because it will be substantially in ledge for most of it. And we've depicted, coordinated this with Mike and Rick and Nate at Woodard and Curran to ensure that they're comfortable and satisfied. We've responded to comments that Nate proffered, including ensuring that we have insulation over the line when we're in the, at these shallow depths of cover.
Are the 2 properties that you will be running by, since it's a private extension, are they now obligated by our rules to start to pay debt service, or are they exempt from that because it's private?
Well, there's,
One he said was vacant.
yeah, the parcel that's closest to the existing gravity line actually fronts on a section of that gravity line, Mr. Chatte's
So the
property.
Chateys already have it.
Well, I don't know that he's being billed, but that condition already exists. So if he's not being billed, this would probably bring your attention to it.
It's a vacant property now. I
Yes.
think.
Yeah, any property that has frontage adjacent to a gravity sewer that the town has installed, according to the plain language of the ordinance, receives a debt service bill. And I don't have much more information than that. I presume that the town will elect to start sending those bills out.
Yeah, the property owner on the vacant lot is not receiving a bill at this point. Because I believe it stops right at the corner of that property. It doesn't go past, can you point to where the,
Yeah, it's a little red.
right there?
Is that it?
That's the end of
Yeah,
it,
right
right there?
Where is that?
No,
It says-
you were right at the first one. Because you can see down, existing hub, right there.
Yeah.
So it goes right to the corner of the property, so it doesn't go past it, it's right at the corner.
Okay. Existing,
So he is currently not,
So the blackened in from the
Right.
red extension is all new stuff.
Wait a second, is that how our ordinance is written, that it has to be on the property? Because what if you have like a 30-something acre parcel and that?
no, it just if it goes in front, it's supposed to. It goes small number of feet in front of it, it's probably gotten missed. Because it doesn't fully pass it, and it was the same, wasn't it the same property
Yes.
owner?
Yep.
It was the same property owner as the next lot up.
Yeah, this is a partitioned off lot that's been
So the
recently
lot got
sold.
partitioned off.
When
So-
Vanderkeef moved in?
Vanderkeef sold the lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it probably contributed to the fact that it was one large, large lot, and the house was way
Oh,
up
okay.
there, and
Which made
it's
no sense to,
right, to charge them.
yeah.
But then across the street, Reuter and Rung,
They're hooked up.
they are hooked
Yeah.
up, okay. All right. Now, has Vanderkeef been appraised of what's gonna be happening?
Yes.
He's been part of this.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact,
Works out.
Is he gonna tie, are they gonna tie in?
in time, he will probably, he asked for a specific location for the stub, but I don't know his timeline for sure. But you will notice that there is a depicted area where, in order to preserve a specimen tree on the Odell property, Mr. Odell is depicting his house connection, actually clipping a corner of Mr. Vanderkeef's property, which will be subject to needing an easement. And I have a letter from Peter and Marcy Vanderkeef indicating that they're agreeable to granting an easement, subject to their attorneys completing the easement between the two parties.
And I was in contact with Richard Chate about the vacant lot, and it was his opinion that the stub could go any place, probably down at the lower end of that property, because if he was gonna build a house, it would be set way back from the road, because there's much more space in the back, so it wouldn't matter to him.
Okay. Sort of building off yours, does the McGonagall Golf Club have any responsibility on this, since all across the street from both of these properties are the golf club?
I don't know how that works with a golf club,
That's just all open green area
Right.
there
Yeah.
too. I just can't imagine if you clip a corner of, like, they're on the other end of the 30-acre lot,
No, it
and then
doesn't make sense.
it touches the
Yeah.
corner of their property. If that's how the ordinance is written, I would say let's reassess that. Like, certain footage from your physical dwelling that would require wastewater removal, but not just your property line. That doesn't make sense.
I think there is if you're set back a certain depth, then you're not considered eligible for tie-in, unless you want, I think it's something like 150 feet. We ran into that when
Ken's
we
the
ran
expert
that
at-
south extension, that there are some houses there along Route 1, but they're set all the way over near the shoreline.
Yeah, I think it's 200 feet is
Okay.
the non-compulsory location.
Yes.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
ones.
So, okay, that was just a.
All your golfing buddies are safe now,
Yeah.
all one of them.
So,
That is a nice spruce tree on that corner.
Yeah.
I recognize it now in my head.
okay. We have any further questions here? Oh, Mike.
Owen had asked, and I'm not sure, if his question got answered, but this sewer is just like, will be built to town specs, just like we're building it. The only good part is somebody else is paying for it. Outside of that, it's our sewer, or it will be our sewer, and built to our specs if somebody else was building it as well. So it's a good thing for the houses that will be able to connect, and it'll be good to get those out of leach fields.
Don't back up too far.
Come on back.
Is
Finally
there
got him to the mic.
random question? Has there been anyone on Beauchamp that has displayed a desire for that too? Because I mean, if you hit Beauchamp, then you can start going.
He is just, Bill can speak for this, he is just to the point, once you get past there, then you're looking at a pump station.
Slopes.
So
Oh,
this is gonna be all gravity, no pump station, but after this,
Because he is up on a little bit of a high spot there, a little bit.
The high spot actually is between his property and the existing manhole. So we actually gain 4 feet of elevation as we approach that manhole, and then we dive down, which is part and parcel of how many structures that we're ending up needing to put in order to.
The high point, I think, is somewhere right about that area.
Oh, okay. You got grading.
Yeah, if you look at the elevation on the
Yep, yep.
C2 sheet, that kind of demonstrates that we have to cut into
Do
a
I have
bit
to go
of a
somewhere?
bank.
Not that one, but down to here?
Yeah,
That one.
yeah. Certainly on that, at that scale, or at least on the screen, the line works fairly bled out, but it does
Oh,
depict that.
yeah. Yeah, you can just see it looping up here. Very faint lines. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Do we have to have any sort of liability? Do we have any liability on this until we assume
It's
ownership
all
of it?
built to standard and everything.
Yeah, so this is just awesome. We approve it.
The only thing Nate wanted to be sure was that the legal part of the right-of-way, so that never becomes a problem, shooting across the end of his drive is taken care of. Outside of that, we're just like, it's in our right-of-way, it's our line. Or will
Yeah,
be.
there is a note on here, required up here, Vandercliff, or, yeah, new sanitary easement required for benefit of Odell.
Yep.
You know, pointing to where that
Three-point
line
type.
runs across. Well, I'm sure that this is much bigger diagram when it comes
And
off of their printer.
I gave in full-size prints,
I'll
but
have it.
you weren't given them.
I move to approve the requested sewer extension at 4 Spear Street as presented by Bill Lane of Gartley and Dorsey.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Very good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Yeah.
time this evening.
Thank you for sticking around.
Surely.
Entertain a motion to exit as wastewater.
Move to exit as wastewater commissioners.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? That concludes that portion of the business. As I said in my notes to you, that because this was a relatively short meeting, I'd like to take most of our liaison reports tonight. You didn't see that, did you?
No, I got my
Oh, okay.
reportage stuff right here.
Now, just as a reminder, I hope the Conservation Commission is planning on coming on the 22nd. Because we've also have the Recreation Committee is planning on coming in and make a request to change the pesticide ordinance.
Yep.
And we wanted to do a double hit on this because we'll have the Conservation Commission here, so that they can weigh in at the same time.
What's the date of that? What?
22nd.
Okay, I'll send an email right now.
Yep. Parks Committee is meeting on Wednesday. They're gonna be looking at Mary Lee and probably also Memorial and Goodrich Parks, evaluating works that needs to be done this spring and summer. The Library Committee had a rather productive meeting, April 24th. First of all, on the library website, there is now an ability to make a donation online to the building fund. It's through a PayPal process account. They are now tracking internet usage down there and factoring out their own employees. They're getting somewhere in the mid-20s. Now, this was as of April 24th.
20 users?
20 users per day logging in to actually use the internet down there. Apparently, it discounts, if you walk by and you got your phone and it's, set to connect Wi-Fi and you just walk by, it's not going to pick that up. They did receive a $2,500 grant. This is again the library for a virtual reality setup. Yeah, big heads and everything. Also, it came out that the library has roughly $943,000 in their investment account. Now, that's what's invested. Does not count what's in their checkbook, which has another rather substantial amount because they use that throughout the year to reimburse the town for the expenses that the town pays for. That's the way that process is set up. The town pays, then bills the library committee, and the library committee reimburses. So, they had a fairly lengthy discussion on how they wanted to proceed with the use of that, realizing some of it
In terms of sitting on cash for the
is,
year?
well, as opposed to having almost $1 million in their investment account, where it's supposed to be used for the betterment of the library, and how would they, anticipate using that? It's not like an endowed chair at some college that you put the money in and it just sits there, and whatever it, rolls off as interest goes to paying the professor's salary. A lot of that money are just gifts that have been made to the library over the years and aren't really, some of them are sort of an endowment where you can't touch the principal, but it rolls off interest for, like for the children's books or for videos or things like that. But, so they're sort of looking in and say, hey, wait, maybe we ought to be doing something other than just letting it accumulate. Because the last couple of years have been very good for that investment account. So
I'm confused, and that's separate from the endowment money? Or that's commingled with the endowment money? It's all the same?
They have it all lined up. They know exactly which is in, because, they've got just this, 10, 12 separate accounts. Some of them were set up for specific purposes and maybe only held $9,000, $10,000. And then there's the big one, but altogether it comes out $943,000 as of actually it was the 1st of April, because that's when the reports come in. But they're trying to figure out, what should we be doing? It's sort of rolled into the next discussion that they had is what's the role of the library committee? Paul Charbonneau led a very spirited discussion related to, one, should the library committee be, really in charge of or more heavily involved in the building process? It's sort of a complaint, why isn't the library why do they have such a lack of involvement at this period? But, they had several very meaningful discussions at that. I missed the last Friends of the Rockport Public Library meeting, so I can't report on that. And the investment committee meets July 20th. I am going to point to you to let us know what happened at the Midco Solid Waste Board of Directors meeting.
Well, the first thing to note was that it was the last meeting attended by our sitting chair, Tom Ford, because Tom Ford passed away just days after that meeting. So that was kind of hard. Of course, what did we do that meeting? We got a great update. Oh, we went through, one of the big things was going through, and I'm sorry, I got that report before they had finalized it, and I should send it to you all. I told you I was going to send it to you. The responses that they got from the survey.
Yeah, I've been asking for that. She was gonna send it to me once they get, in a
Yep.
digital
Yep.
form, once they get it all
And they've
finished
got
up.
it, so it should be just like once she's got time to sit down in the
Right.
computer and do it. It's fascinating stuff. It's a pretty large report, but that's because they didn't want to start picking and choosing like what comments they decided to share. So basically, if you left a comment, even if it said Jim Guerra was awesome or Jim Guerra was horrible, they put all of those in there. But going forward and trying to think about how we set up the facility, reorganizing the facility, things around the physical facility, from the people to the the height of, I wish that the windows were lower when I put my cardboard into it, it would be easier. When you guys had that temporary space, it was easier for me to get my stuff in. We love Sid. Don't lose your employees. Maybe you could be open these days a week. I like to recycle. I mean, it's just a wealth of knowledge for us to utilize, almost too much. So that's where I think their second stage is more of the digesting of the knowledge and the information and going forward. There were some financials presented, none of which raised any alarm or concern. The big thing was this. Oh, you're gonna get a kick out of this. It's all coming back to me. It's flooding back to me. So the Town of Hope. The Town of Hope doesn't necessarily want to be a team player. The Town of Hope would like to hold on to their money. And so it's the two installations. There's the put agreement money, and then there's the bigger bulk money. Here's where it starts to get confusing. Like, theoretically, there's nothing wrong with you holding on to your own money as long as you give that money to us when it comes closure time, because you got to close this thing. But here's where it starts to get a little bit funny. I'd love to see the closure fund money, which will eventually get up to about $2 million. That's going to start accruing interest if we put it in a good growth earning bearing account. And so if we, like the endowments, start taking some of that money and pay for stuff, but the Town of Hope is not having the same amount, every time we use that interest money, we're going to have to ask them for supplemental payments. And the kicker was, okay, it seemed to be a little bit of a, and if Hope is watching, I'll say the same thing to you all too. It seemed to be a little bit of a power play to try to leverage this money for them to get equal voting rights on the board. We have a weighted board. Basically, if Camden and Rockport vote the same way, even one person from Rockport and both members, so you can get 3 people on an 8-member board that can control a vote. And that is a concern, and we should address it. But every time they talked about keeping that money, they talked about the vote. And so it was difficult to separate those two things and say, well, let's just talk about this money. And the final kicker was when I finally said, hey, wait a second, we're talking about the put option here. Are you going to hold on to the bigger bulk of money too when it comes in? And the answer that I got was yes. So I understand a bit where they're coming from, but every argument you can make for the Town of Hope on why they need that money to not get TANs or the tax anticipated, the TINs or whatever, you can do that same argument for Camden, and they're paying more. For us, you can do it for any town. So any argument you have on why you need to keep that money, I can say the same argument. A little frustrating. Their chair was very, the chair was very professional. He just voiced his concerns, but they seem somewhat entrenched on that, which is just odd. But we're going to be.
And oh, by the way, that voting structure helped them out in the past, so.
And
didn't help us out, but.
Yes. So
Now, that letter that they sent, they were really expressed the concern, would we really leave that money in the closure fund? Or would we then drain it right back? And I'm talking we as another member of the Midco Solid Waste Board.
And that's where they would tie in their voting rights, because they would give 100% control of the money to the Solid Waste Corporation, but only retain 12% or so voting right on what to do with that. I tried to make counter arguments about the fact that just because John French, if he's there by his lonesome, he doesn't get 42% of the airtime in the room. So any of the policies that we vote on are almost always unanimous. It's very controversial things that aren't. But don't minimize your ability to have impact on policy. Stop focusing so much on your voting share than what you can get accomplished at a meeting. But
So you don't think it really persuaded them?
I don't think so. I think that starting to do things like being very clear about our path forward, and if your funds are not commingled with our funds, every stinking 3 months, 3 to 4, 8, 9 months, we're going to be asking you for money. And we're going to have to go through a ridiculous process of figuring how much money you owe us. And it just makes so much more sense to pool this money, and then we'll talk about, we've been talking about the voting structure. And we need to buckle down on that, at least have that conversation in a robust way. But and then as far as pathways, I was unavailable to make that meeting. And as far as the recreation committee, because they've been meeting in the mornings, it's been a lot more difficult. I don't know if Rick has attended any of the
No,
recreation ones.
nope, I haven't been.
I will for sure touch base with
You haven't been able to
Suzanne.
make them?
I
Yeah,
haven't,
okay,
because they start at 8:30, and I typically have to be in Augusta by 9,
yeah.
and so it just makes it difficult. Yeah.
I've been in touch with Suzanne, but I haven't been going to the meetings.
But I haven't heard any complaints.
Now, on Pathways,
Yep.
you know, Helen is on that.
Yep.
And this last meeting, she got home early, but said it was a very productive meeting.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well,
What'd they do?
Good combination.
I don't remember that because I wasn't there.
But no, if I had to get, oh, I do remember
It was
seeing
like
an
8:30.
I remember seeing an email that the bulk of their conversation may have been centered around Route 1 North, which is a Camden-specific project, but I think they had gotten some sort of resident expert or an update or something. They've got that whole subcommittee with Route 1 North. But just pathways, things generally speaking that do involve us continues to be the Maritime Farms project by the Hannaford and figuring that all out.
Okay, you're gonna need to flip those one page at a
One
time
page
to
at
find
a
them all.
So, I was gonna take over the Harbor Committee upon Brendan's, leaving the board, and remind me, did I miss that meeting? I didn't get any notices, but something all of a sudden says it might have been just late last week.
Oh,
I
yes, it was, no, it's
Coming up.
this Thursday.
This Thursday, okay. well, I will-
5:15.
I will make that, there we go.
Okay.
Harbor Committee. The Opera House Committee had a very full meeting just a couple of days ago, where they talked about something new and something old, something borrowed, something blue. Let me see, Terry updated us on the air conditioning repair, and the money she was able to put into the budget hopefully will be approved. Bringing $20,000 more into the reserve, that brings us up to 60. Talked about fixing various parts of the system rather than doing the whole thing and making sure that we weren't being taken for a ride. There was a new request, new to my consciousness, of apparently some people have asked for having bathrooms on the level of the auditorium. So if we were to go ahead and even look at the possibilities, what were the possibilities? And that conversation integrated with how to,
Heard of that one.
You'd have to lose a concession.
huh?
You'd have basically
You
the
just, you never
concession
know,
box.
you never know, maybe, anyway, this conversation also was part and parcel with, how do we store the Genie lift that it was given to us from the school? Is that the right piece of equipment to have? Yes, it was given to us, but we need something, and so a lot of things were investigated, a lot of things were talked about. You know,
Did you inform them about the capital improvement plan and needing their input on the Opera House items on that plan?
Terry is well aware of that, and she's doing a great job of,
She has done a great job with
Yeah.
the CIP.
Okay.
yeah. So, yeah, they know the process.
Okay.
And, yeah. So the conversation went it looked at many possibilities and combinations thereof. I opened my big fat trap and talked about something, but not worth mentioning.
We ought to live stream those so we know what you're talking about.
Right?
Oh, no, no,
In the Opera House.
You know,
No,
actually, they meet over at town
Virginia's over
office.
town
Oh,
office.
you are some clever people.
So,
Incentive to wire up the Richardson room.
and it's that infrastructure's halfway there, but you either, yeah. But, so anyway, progress is made, people have homework to do, and things will come this way when it happens. There was one subject where we had to outline the process, the procedure. Say again? But that didn't raise to the level of the select board. I don't. Couldn't have been that important. It wasn't didn't hit my notes.
Terry's dying.
I forgot my other quickly. If you're done,
I
Mr.
am
Parker.
done.
The Legion Hall. Just do my quick Legion update. They got a new roof on there. They've been doing a lot of work still. happy to rent it out. And they're going to start this. It's kind of like every other Monday. I think it starts at 8 o'clock. They're trying to do coffee. Monday morning, go in, drink coffee with a veteran and ask questions of them to figure out why they're all crazy or something. I don't quite know. But it seems like it could become an interesting thing. And now that I'm talking, I just want to take a half a second and really, I said this to Megan the other day, and this is not to downplay any of the other town employees that we have, because you all do a phenomenal job, but I was blown away and continued to be blown away by the work that Megan does for this town. I felt like she ran that entire capital improvement plan meeting and actually really, really, really well. And again, Linda, you're amazing too, but it's just, it was interesting. I didn't know this young girl very well when she got the job. To see that there was a college stipend raised some concerns for me, but sure, we'll give it a go. And she has just continued to impress.
She did a very good job. I asked her if she felt like she could take over that responsibility of doing that presentation and doing all the work, and she was a little bit leery, and I said, you know, you know this stuff, you can do it. And she did a great job.
But she also did the food, and
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she set that whole meeting up. That was
Yeah, yes.
it's very nice.
And since you double back on things, I want to remind everybody about the Memorial Day Parade. If you're marching in the parade, you get to have a barbecue lunch over at the Masonic Hall between your appearance here in Rockport and your appearance up in Lincolnville. So march in the parade, get a burger.
You got no excuses. I got to shave my face to march in that thing.
Are you out of regulation?
When I put my dress blues on, it's difficult for me to have this on my face. So I shave my face twice a year, Veterans Day and Memorial Day, to put on my blues and march with the Legion.
Yeah.
As you please.
And the other one, and
My
it
drill
came up, and
instructor.
I think you probably saw the emails that went by today, and I know I forwarded one on to you, I think. The marijuana forum,
I was gonna ask about that.
is it gonna be down here or up there?
Down here.
Okay, originally we were
You have
talking about moving
speakers?
it all upstairs.
We have two experts,
Right, okay.
and I'm still working on the legislators. But every time I see Miss Melnick at the State House, we talk. That's Phil Sausier's. She's the Bernstein Schur.
Right, okay.
And from when we talked, and I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn, but I just would prefer to have Miss Melnick there, not because Mr. Saucier is not a great attorney, but it's just marijuana isn't necessarily his field of expertise where it is with her. So, I mean, her ability to answer questions about community impact, what it looked like in other states, what other states did, where the marijuana committee is at right now, she would be, in my opinion, a far better person to answer some of those questions. And then I did get a commitment from, I don't know why I'm spacing, Paul McCarrier. He was Legalize Maine or some derivation thereof that worked on the implementation, and he is also a staple there at the marijuana meetings. And then I'm trying to get two folks, Representative Hickman and Representative Ackley. There's kind of a lacking of female Republicans on that committee. There's only one, and she's a senator, and it's just difficult to get her time. I was trying to get a good breakup, male, female, Democrat, Republican, but I think I'll just go with Representative Hickman and Representative Ackley if I can get them. And I'll see them both tomorrow, so I'll talk to them about
And
it.
that's gonna be down here, right? We're gonna do it down here.
But as far as those two experts,
Pack 'em to the
as long as you can get Bernstein Shore to say Miss Melnick is good, then
Yeah, I'll reach out to Phil again, but we talked about that, and for some reason, the firm thought that it would be, I'll reach out to Phil again.
Phil may know more town stuff, but not necessarily town interacting with new marijuana laws stuff, just as well as she would be able to.
And I just received an email from Dave Jackson that because of the iffy weather on Wednesday, they're gonna start in the Richardson Room for the Parks Committee meeting. So, anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
Second.
Any opposed? Oh, okay, we're all in favor.